traditional name is Nuyamzits Ekstukuya. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to share with you my thoughts and experiences from the events of the final Truth and Reconciliation event in Ottawa. As many of you know, I was not raised with my dad, and I did not reunite with him or my community until I was 24 years old. In meeting my dad and getting to know him, I began to learn my culture, I began to learn who I was, and more importantly, my dad's story. My dad went to the Alberni residential school, and his very sad, difficult, and abusive time there had drastic effects on his life for many years. And although his life has continued and he has found peace, I know that for him, memories of his childhood still haunt him today, as with many survivors of the residential schools. I attended the TRC event in Vancouver in 2011 with my dad, and that was when I learned many details of his life. I also heard stories from so many survivors, and I knew that I had to learn more and understand this sad chapter of Canadian history. My dad and all survivors deserve that much from each one of us. And that is why it is so important for me to be able to do cultural presentations in schools. It would not be fair to continue to ignore the history or to diminish the impacts the schools have had on our families. All our students have to be taught about this history. As Justice Sinclair, one of the commissionaires, has said, residential schools were around for over 100 years, and that several generations of children went through the schools during that time. The damage that the schools inflicted on their lives and the lives and members of their families and communities will take generations to fix. The loss of language and culture, the impacts on family functions, the devastation of self-identity, the loss of respect for education, and the loss of faith and trust in Canada's government will take many years to overcome. Reconciliation is not an opportunity to convince Aboriginal people to get over it and become like everyone else. That's what residential schools were all about, and look how that went. True change will come in our daily conversations and interactions. Reconciliation will be up to each one of us as individuals. All levels of government and our religious organizations. We have a lot of work to do. My experiences in Ottawa were incredibly powerful and very moving. As I began my journey, I was anxious and nervous, not sure what the week would look like. But I knew this was a journey that I must do and do alone. On the Saturday, I attended workshops that were hosted by Kairos. And one of the workshops was the healing journey of a former RCMP officer by Ron Short. He shared his story of being a young RCMP officer stationed in the Northwest Territories and how he had to go with the Indian agent and remove 2 young girls from their mom who were being sent to residential school. He was very emotional as he shared his story, and he said he knew it was wrong in his heart, but it was his job. He carried those memories with him for over 50 years, and he shared with us how it affected his whole life, including his wife and his children. He has been accepted by the Aboriginal community of North Bay, Ontario, and now he continues to work on his pain through the Aboriginal culture, the very culture that the government wanted to remove from the children that Ron had to take away. As he shared his journey, he was so honest And the job that he had to do as a young man in the RCMP still haunts him today. I was fascinated to hear this story because my dad was taken the exact same way by an Indian agent and an RCMP officer to be sent to school. I wondered if those that took my dad also realized how wrong it was. And I wonder how it impacted them. At the end of the workshop, the participants, who were academics, survivors, students, all in all about 30 people, all shared their thoughts. I thanked Ron for having the courage to share his truth. And then I realized that there were also other victims of this crazy system that the federal government had set up with residential schools. I look forward to staying in touch with Ron, and when I saw him on the last day, he gave me a hug with tears in his eyes and said goodbye until we meet again. I pray Ron will find peace, and through the support of our people, I believe he will, because sharing the truth allows us to be free. On Sunday, Josette and I did the Walk for Reconciliation together. There were about 10,000 people that marched with us, Aboriginal people from across this country, various religious organizations, many people with different ethnic backgrounds, all having their own reason for being there. The walk started in Gatineau, Quebec, and went to downtown Ottawa. There were so many drummers and singers, and as we walked, we went by many churches, all different denominations. Their church bells tolled as we walked past. Very powerful to me, and signifying the coming together to continue the work. When we completed the walk, as you've now heard, there was a group of women singing the Women's Warrior song. So Josette and I joined in. The energy was incredible. They called the survivors out to dance. And I have to say how proud I was to see Josette go out into the circle to dance with a beautiful smile on her face. We talked yesterday, and Josette thought that no one would see her, so she took the healthy risk and joined in. Little did she know that she would be on APTN that night. And the whole clip would go viral with over 248,000 hits. It really was a time for us to enjoy our culture, live in the moment, and support one another. On Tuesday, the final report was to be released. And I can tell you that as it grew closer to 11 a.m., you could feel the tension start to build. Not only for what was in the report and the recommendations, but how it would be received from Canadians. And the fear that this would just be another document to be shelved away. I know for me, I will not allow that to happen. The report has 94 very important recommendations, and I hope that each and every Canadian takes time to read them and then figure out how they can make a difference going forward. Before I left for Ottawa, I had spoken to many classrooms around Langley in regards to the history of residential school, and I'm honored that I'm able to share my story with the students of Langley. I went to Yorkson Creek Middle School and presented to 3 grade 6 classes. And the students were so passionate and so engaged and wanting to know more. Then they made hearts out of seed paper, put their own personal messages to survivors on each heart, and gave them to me to take to Ottawa. I have to say it was very powerful to hand those out to survivors. Along with the bookmarks the district made to let the survivors know that our students here in Langley will learn and will not forget the survivors, and that they will continue to learn the truth about residential schools and Aboriginal history. The other event that I attended was the Heart Garden at Rideau Hall. Absolutely amazing to see hundreds of students plant hearts that had been made from students across this country, with very profound messages on them for the residential school survivors and for the 6,000 students who died in those schools. A couple of examples of the messages were, you can't rush reconciliation. Stay strong. For the silenced voices and untold stories, believe. Once the ceremony was over, it was quite something to look out on the lawn and see hundreds of hearts all around. People were taking time to read them and appreciate the messages. After I returned home, I sent an email to the manager of the Delta Hotel. This was the hotel that hosted the TRC event. I wanted to thank her and all her exceptional staff for all they did over the 3 days while we were there. Her response to me via email was that it was an honor to have all of us there. And they all realized that they were not just hosting an event, that they were there participating in and witnessing history, and that they were honored to be a part of the process. To me, they had an open heart and an open mind to embrace what was happening in the hotel, and that they really were learning and had a sense of compassion by the time we all left. As I reflect back to that week and all my experiences, as what I have shared with you are just a few, I was moved by the survivors and their willingness to share their stories, their courage to continue to fight through the demons of their past, and really embrace all those who were there to learn and understand. For me, it was a part of my healing journey to understand what happened to my dad, my aunties, my uncles. And I believe that each one of us has the obligation to learn and understand the history of residential schools so that we can move forward in the relationships between Aboriginal people and all Canadians. I raise my hands up to you tonight, to each one of you, as you make your commitment